Grieving is one of the most natural ways to process experiences. We all grieve. Some people grieve a loss of a friend or a partner, or even a loss of a parent, which, in my opinion, is one of the hardest emotions to process. Sometimes people need to grieve the idea of someone or something. I'm going to do an episode about an idea I've had of someone that I had to grieve recently. And no, it's not the episode 7 person. I want to talk about grieving in this episode because it came up a lot in a workshop I did with Emily Nagoski. She's the author of the book Come As You Are. I highly recommend this book. It has great insight on female sexuality and can be beneficial for those wanting to learn more. This course forced me almost naturally to do some of the work I was avoiding. I'm a big advocate on doing the work on yourself, and part of the work is grieving. And grieving comes in many forms. Some people avoid grieving, a lack they experience, by acting out and turning to drugs and alcohol to process their pain. Some people become extreme perfectionists to compensate for lack of something while growing up. I personally find myself constantly grieving things in my life. One of them was growing up without my mother, and that one was hard. But I also recently grieved my previous self when I met myself after many years of thinking I knew who I was. That kind of grieving had a different taste because it required letting go of the idea of who I thought I was and accepting who I am. And it felt like a double-edged knife because meeting myself felt so good, but I couldn't carry who I was anymore, therefore one of them had to go. The thing about grieving is that it's an uncomfortable emotion for both boys and girls. As children, boys are taught to be angry and express it, but they are not really taught to process sadness and loneliness. And girls are taught to always be happy and smile and not taught to process their sadness and express it. How many times were we told as children, لا ما تزعلي and لا ما تبكي? So how on earth do we grow up suddenly to a world that encourages us to speak our truth, yet looks away when uncomfortable emotions such as sadness and grief surface? Many women grieve a part of their sexuality. This is the part of grief that I want to focus on in this short episode. We spoke previously about unwanted arousal, and there were many examples in class that came up, and sexual assault for young girls was one topic that kept coming up. And it's worth to dedicate an episode just for this topic because, 1, it is uncomfortable, but it also very much exists in our culture and other cultures. And also 2, there seems to be a big misconception and shame around sexual assault and abuse that needs to be addressed. This topic is never ending, so remember that my episodes are shorter than the average podcast episodes, and context is everything, so take what I say with a pinch of salt, but also brew on what I'm about to tell you. Someone asked about why do children who were abused kept coming back to their molesters for attention. It's because they are feeding for what they need at that present phase. They need attention. This was the only environment they could get the attention from. This was hard to digest, and I had to sit through it and accept the dark side of sexuality and not just the exciting stuff that I was hoping to come across. Studies, according to Emily Nagoski, have shown that children who have all the basic needs can still die from loneliness. Literally, die. Therefore, attention is a need. So when a child needs attention and they can only get it from their molesters, this doesn't mean that the child wants to be sexually molested. Yep, that's really dark. And then chances are that when the child grows up into an adult, I'll specify an adult woman for the sake of this episode, she will find it difficult to associate sexual arousal and safety together. And one of the best things she could do for herself is grieve. She needs to grieve her experience and also grieve the childhood and circumstances that she had to grow up in. And most importantly, grieve that unlike her other girlfriends, she didn't have the opportunity to experience and know what sex is in a healthy, natural way. I understand that this episode can be thought-provoking, and it's meant to be. because I can't stress how important it is for us as adults to play with adults and to understand that we have a huge social and moral obligation to not look away when we know a child may be going through an unwanted and an unpleasant experience. Thank you for listening in, and see you all next time.